my main interest in SMR technology actually is the potential for it to abate carbon emissions in the industrial heat sector, where sort of standard old reactor designs don't produce steam of sufficient quality for such utility. And a project that we wrote about recently in a piece called Gaining Steam was in fact this X-energy Dow design, which since we wrote that piece, I believe they've announced that they're going to implement an 80 megawatt module design, maybe even up to 4 of them, or I may be remembering that wrong, but I believe the reactor design is 80 megawatts, and it's going into their Seadrift plant. And, Dow has many energy intense petrochemical processes along the Gulf Coast that, there's a reason why NatGen cogeneration plants are so popular, because they're very efficient in converting as much of the energy into either electricity or heat, which is very useful in industrial settings. And most people would be surprised to learn that if you sort of measure the carbon emissions that the world, that humans produce from industrial steam, it's actually greater than the combination of all of our transportation and our airline industry puts out. I think it's 10% of our emissions come from industrial steam, and the sum of those, the latter two, is only 8%. And so SMRs, because they operate at a higher temperature, not quite high enough for the highest end, applications, but it can address a big chunk of that pyramid. Anywhere between 500 to 1,000 degrees C, depending on the fourth generation design that any particular SMR technology would be optimized for. I think that this is actually the Dow project, where the reactor is small enough to be housed safely within a pre-existing brownfield site that has security after 9/11 and all of those things. That could be a real breakthrough, one that we're pretty excited about. The micro reactor / battery type technologies that Richard is referring to also is very interesting. I believe it's about bringing power to where it's desperately needed and on short notice, like grid down situations, aftermath of emergencies. We just wrote about one such emergency in our latest piece, More Than Meets the Eye, about the great ice storm in Quebec, and how that might happen here in the U.S. So there's a lot of exciting things, and the thing that I'm most excited about the proliferation of SMR or microtechnology or nuclear batteries like the ones Richard is describing, is all of it serves to demonstrate to the public the utility and safety of this technology, and begins to be very powerful weapons in what is ultimately a propaganda war around the viability of this technology, the utility of it. Look, if somebody set up a microreactor a half a mile from my home, and that microreactor powered, a 4-mile radius that included my home, I would feel very comfortable living that close to one of these reactors. I mean, the Navy submariners have served on ships with nuclear reactors on the exact same ship for years. There's no evidence that anybody's ever been hurt by one of these things. This concept is really is the real battle that we need to fight. And so my main source of inspiration from these developments is the undeniable public visible demonstration of the risk to reward ratio of these things, because they're really just off the charts.
Okay, where you were going with that is important. I want to talk about that in just a few moments, but I also wanted to address a couple of things. And first of all, thank you for clarifying that's what I was really trying to say, probably a little bit in a clunky manner, that after Fukushima in the West, there was a real abandonment of or negative trend away from nuclear energy. Even France was talking about shutting down a number of their reactors, but of course Ukraine changed a lot of that. It's really going the other way, and that's where I think that it's a pretty fascinating time, an exciting time to be involved in nuclear energy. Even these larger projects, the wind has really shifted politically in their favor, which is hard to imagine from where we were a few years ago. So it's true that it's not just SMRs, it's a broad nuclear renaissance that's underway. I also wanted to say that you reminded me that, because you did write up favorably the X-energy Dow joint venture that you've talked about, and you pointed out in your note that you don't have any skin in the game. You're not an investor in X-energy.
No, yeah.
So I wanted to point out, in full disclosure, that I am an investor in micronuclear. So I just want to make sure everybody knows about that.